On a frozen Montana highway, a single father discovers a dying female cop buried in the blizzard, her badge clutched in blue fingers, blood staining the snow. His daughter trembles in the cab of the truck. His golden retriever refuses to leave the woman's side. What begins as a desperate rescue spirals into a fight against corruption that will shake the entire police force. Follow my story to the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has traveled. The Montana highway vanished into a storm of white death. Snow hurled itself across the windshield in relentless waves, blinding headlights, muting every sound but the wail of wind. The old pickup truck crawled along the road tires, crunching ice, engine growling, as if even the machine wanted to quit. Inside, Ethan Cole gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. He leaned forward as though the extra inches might pierce the wall of snow. Beside him, 8-year-old Lily pressed her mittened hands against the fogged glass. Her breath formed clouds, soft puffs that disappeared as quickly as they came. In the bed of the truck, the golden retriever stirred. Hunter Restless rose and let out a sharp bark that cut through the storm like lightning cracking a midnight sky. "Easy, boy," Ethan muttered, eyes never leaving the road. But Hunter didn't ease. He leapt from the bedpaws, hitting the snow with a muffled thud, golden fur swallowed by white. He didn't look back. He only ran. Ethan's heart lurched. "Damn it, Hunter!" Daddy Lily cried, twisting in her seat. "He's going after something?" Ethan braked tires, skidding before catching again. He threw the truck into park and ripped his door open. The blizzard slammed into him, stealing his breath, freezing his eyelashes in seconds. He could barely see the shape of Hunter through the white curtain. The dog was digging powerful legs, carving trenches, nose pressed to the snow. "Stay in the truck!" Ethan shouted over the storm. "Lock the doors!" Lily's frightened eyes stared at him, but she obeyed, pulling the handle, the click of the lock lost in the wind. Ethan stumbled forward, boots sinking into drifts that reached his shins. Each step felt like dragging lead through cement. The cold pierced straight through layers of denim and flannel, biting into skin. And then he saw it, a splash of red in the endless white. Blood. Dark crimson soaking the snow. Hunter whined and pressed his body, low golden fur spreading warmth across someone. Ethan dropped to his knees, his breath caught. A woman lay half buried in the drift. Her fingers were stiff, clutching a badge. Her uniform, torn and crusted with ice, clung to her frame. Her lips were blue eyes, closed skin gray as ash. For a heartbeat, Ethan thought she was gone. "God Almighty," he whispered. Hunter pressed tighter, nose nudging at her chest. His tail gave a single wag, the signal Lisa had trained into him long ago. A signal Ethan hadn't seen in years. Alive. Weak, but alive. Ethan's calloused fingers found her neck. There, faint thready but a pulse. His chest tightened with relief. "Daddy, is she dead?" Lily's small voice cut through the blizzard like broken glass. She'd cracked the window, her face pale, eyes wide. No, Ethan shouted back. Not dead, but close. Hunter shifted, pressing his weight against the woman as though determined to keep her tethered to life. Ethan's mind flashed to Lisa, his late wife, long nights in the barn, her voice steady as she trained Hunter for search and rescue. "He'll save lives when we can't, Ethan. He'll know what to do when we don't." That was before the cancer, before she slipped away, leaving Ethan with a daughter, a dog, and a silence that never really left. He shook off the memory. Now wasn't the time. He yanked off his jacket, heavy and lined with wool, and draped it over the woman, tucking it beneath Hunter's warm body. "Hold her, boy. Keep her warm." The retriever's ears flicked, tail twitching once. Obedience, acknowledgement. Ethan looked at the woman properly now. She was young 30s, maybe. Dark hair matted with blood against her skull. A scar cut across her eyebrow, old but deep. She looked like someone who had fought, who had lived through violence before tonight. "We need to move her," Ethan muttered, though the words were nearly carried away by the gale. He slid his arms beneath her. She was light. Too light. Her body limp, fragile as frost on glass. Hunter leapt back into the bed of the truck as Ethan staggered through the drifts, the woman cradled against his chest. But before climbing into the cab, Ethan's eyes caught something in the snow. Tracks. Not footprints. Tire marks. barely visible beneath the fresh fall, but there, leading from the road to the embankment where she had been lying, then back again. Someone had driven here, dumped her, left her to die. This wasn't an accident. Hunter's low growl rumbled deep, vibrating in his chest. He'd seen it too, smelled it. Ethan's stomach twisted. Through the snow far down the highway, faint headlights flickered, then vanished into the void. He climbed into the cab, laying the woman across the bench seat, Hunter pressing close to her once more. "Daddy?" Lily's voice trembled. "Who would do this?" Ethan pressed the accelerator. The old truck roared, pushing through the storm. "I don't know, baby, but someone wanted her gone." The tires bit into ice, carrying them away from the place where innocence had frozen. Inside the cab, silence pressed down, broken only by Lily's soft sobs, Hunter's steady breathing, and the faintest gasp of air from the woman clinging to life. Ethan glanced at her face. The scar. The badge still in her hand. Something about her seemed heavier than just another stranger, like she carried the weight of something larger, something dangerous. He tightened his grip on the wheel. "Hold on," he whispered, unsure if he spoke to her, to Lily, or to himself. The hospital lights finally cut through the snow, glowing like salvation in the blizzard's fury. Ethan didn't know then that bringing her there would set off a chain reaction, that saving one woman in the snow would drag his family into the heart of a storm darker than any winter Montana could throw. The fluorescent lights of Millbrook Falls Hospital glowed like a sanctuary against the raging storm outside. But the moment Ethan pushed through the sliding doors carrying the unconscious woman in his arms, the sanctuary already felt fragile like glass ready to crack. Snow clung to his jacket, his beard even to Lily's mittens, as she hurried behind him, clutching her sketchbook like a shield. Hunter patted at Ethan's side, fur damp and eyes sharp, unwilling to leave the stranger he'd pulled from the edge of death. The automatic doors sighed shut. The blizzard was muffled, but inside the air smelled of antiseptic, sharp and metallic like bleach and old fear. "Help!" Ethan's voice boomed through the lobby. "Somebody, she's freezing to death!" Nurses rushed forward, the squeak of their shoes on linoleum slicing through the silence of the nearly empty waiting area. A gurney clattered into place. Hands reached for the woman, peeling Ethan's jacket away, fastening oxygen over her pale lips. "Hypothermic," one nurse said sharply. "Pulse weak," another confirmed. Dr. Martinez, lean and steady, with eyes that had seen too many nights like this, snapped on latex gloves. "Get her to Trauma 1. Now." The gurney rolled away, wheels rattling against tile. Ethan stood frozen, arms suddenly empty, the weight of her absence startling after the burden of carrying her through the storm. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, will she live?" He crouched, met her wide eyes. Snow still melted in her lashes. "She's in God's hands now, baby, and the doctors." His voice was steady, but inside his chest was a storm of its own. Hunter whined, low eyes fixed on the swinging doors where the woman had vanished. Ethan exhaled, ran a rough hand over his face. He hadn't realized how much adrenaline had been driving him until now. His hands shook. His shoulders ached from carrying her through the drifts, but it was more than exhaustion. It was the tracks he'd seen in the snow, the way Hunter had growled. Someone had wanted her gone. He settled into a plastic chair, Lily curling against his side. Hunter lay at their feet, massive head resting across Ethan's boots, golden fur spreading warmth into the sterile chill of the waiting room. Minutes stretched. An hour, maybe more. The blizzard outside howled against the glass snow piling high, cutting them off from the world. The clock's second hand ticked too loudly. Finally, Dr. Martinez appeared. His gloves were gone, his face shadowed with fatigue. "She's alive," he said first, and Ethan felt something unclench deep inside him. But barely. The doctor continued. "Severe hypothermia, possible concussion. She's lost blood from a head wound. Another hour out there and—" His voice trailed off. He didn't need to finish. Ethan exhaled slowly, relief, but it came laced with dread. "Can we see her?" he asked. Martinez shook his head. "Not yet. She's unconscious. May stay that way 24 hours or longer. But Mr. Cole—" His voice dropped. Low. "Careful. There's something else." Hunter's ears pricked. Martinez leaned closer, lowering his voice so Lily wouldn't hear. She has defensive wounds, cuts, bruises. Someone attacked her. This wasn't an accident. Ethan felt the cold seep into his bones again, not from the storm, but from the truth settling like ice in his blood. Someone had tried to kill her, and now his family was entangled. Hunter pressed tighter against Ethan's leg as though he too understood the shift, the danger rising like a shadow that had followed them inside. The doors hissed again. Another figure entered the waiting room, tall, broad-shouldered, a presence that filled the sterile space like smoke. Sheriff Dalton Briggs. His boots thudded against tile hat dripping snow. His pale eyes swept the room, landing first on Ethan, then on Lily, then on the golden retriever whose hackles rose immediately. "I heard you found someone up on the pass," Briggs said. His voice was smooth, but underneath it was a rasp, a predator's purr. Ethan rose slowly, protective hand on Lily's shoulder. "Yeah. My dog found her." Briggs's gaze lingered on Hunter, then slid to Ethan's face. "Detective Rachel Moore, Denver PD. Not from around here. Strange thing her ending up half dead on our mountain road." The way he said "our" made Ethan's skin crawl. Briggs clicked a pen, pulled a small notebook from his coat. The sound was sharp, mechanical, threatening in the quiet hospital. "I'll need your full statement, Ethan. Every detail." The weight on the word "every" was heavy. Heavy enough that Rachel, unconscious down the hall, seemed to shiver even in her coma. Ethan's jaw tightened. "I told the doctor what happened. My dog Briggs cut him off with a smile that never touched his eyes. Funny thing, a storm like this, visibility near zero. Yet your dog knew exactly where to find her, almost like he was trained." Hunter growled low and dangerous. Ethan placed a calming hand on the retriever's head, but inside fury twisted. Lisa trained him. "My wife. Before she died. Search and rescue. Mountain team stuff." Briggs scribbled, head tilted. That smile again sharp as broken glass. Convenient. Lily clung tighter to Ethan's coat. She didn't understand the words, but she felt the danger in the sheriff's tone. Ethan met Briggs' pale eyes, and for the first time realized the storm outside wasn't the only one he'd be facing. The sheriff tucked his notebook away, but his voice lingered like frostbite. "State police will want to know why a Denver detective ended up bleeding in my county. You'll be hearing from us." He turned and walked away. Boots echoing against the linoleum, each step sounding like a countdown. Hunter's growl followed him until the doors sighed shut behind his frame. Ethan's hand clenched into a fist. He looked down at his daughter, then at his dog, and felt the weight of choices he hadn't asked for but could no longer avoid. This woman, Rachel Moore, wasn't just a stranger in the snow. She was a fuse lit in the dark, and now his family was standing too close to the flame. The door sighed shut behind Sheriff Dalton Briggs. Silence settled, the hard kind, heavy and clinical, like a lid lowering over a jar. The waiting room hummed with the thin electricity of late-night hospitals, vending machine buzz, a distant printer spitting a label, a cough from some unseen corridor. Outside, the blizzard kept grinding its teeth against the glass. Ethan stayed standing for a beat, jaw tight, hand still on Lily's shoulder, the warmth of his palm an anchor for both of them. Hunter's growl faded to a vigilant thrum in his chest, then fell away to steady breathing as the dog laid his head back on Ethan's boots. Daddy, Lily whispered, "I don't like that man." Ethan swallowed. "You don't have to," he said softly. "You just have to let me handle him." "How?" He didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to, because he didn't know. Dr. Martinez returned slower this time, shoulders, a little hunched, eyes rimmed with the fatigue of a town doctor on a winter storm night. He gave Lily a small smile, gave Hunter a careful professional glance, then looked to Ethan. "She's stabilized," he said. "We've got her warmed fluids running oxygen on a slower flow. We'll monitor through the night. If she keeps trending the way she's trending," he shrugged, "we'll see." "And the sheriff?" Ethan asked. The sheriff, Martinez said carefully, "has a badge and keys to all the doors. But I have patience. He'll get whatever he needs at the appropriate time. Not before." Ethan nodded, a grateful flicker in his eyes. "Go home," Mr. Cole Martinez added softer. "Get the kid warm. Let the dog lie down somewhere that doesn't smell like bleach." Ethan looked at Lily, then at the swinging doors that had swallowed the woman in uniform. He shook his head. "We'll wait." Martinez studied him, saw the set of his shoulders, the kind that doesn't move when it's supposed to. "All right," he said. "I'll bring blankets." Time stretched. It did the thing time does in hospitals, elongating, tightening, loosening, turning the minute hand into a slow silver river. Ethan bought a coffee from a machine that thunked like a bad engine. It tasted like pennies and cardboard. He drank it anyway. Lily colored in silence, tongue caught in the corner of her mouth, the crayon squeaking faintly on cheap paper. She drew a dog, a woman in the snow, a truck with a big blue windshield. She drew snowflakes like little asterisks falling across the page. Hunter listened. That's what it looked like listening. To vents, to the elevator, to footsteps, to the weather gnawing at the building trying to get in. At some point, midnight folded into 2 in the morning, then into 4. The storm kept speaking in white noise. A nurse draped a fleece over Lily's knees. Another tucked a second blanket around Ethan's shoulders without breaking stride. Ethan took his ring from his jeans pocket and turned it between thumb and forefinger. He didn't put it on. Not anymore. But sometimes he needed the circle in his hand, the symbol of something that had not ended so much as changed shape into absence. "Miss Moore," a nurse's voice floated down the corridor, then vanished. Names, Ethan thought. She had one, not just a badge and a wound and a scar. Rachel Moore. He turned the name over in his mind until it softened, until it felt less like a headline and more like a person. Morning came gray, then winter blue. Snow still fell slower now. The glass panes were frosted at their corners, feathered with delicate patterns that looked like handwriting from another century. Lily slept curled like a comma against Ethan's side, Hunter's back pressed to her boots, the dog's breath warming the plastic chair legs. A nurse touched Ethan's shoulder. "Mr. Cole." He blinked himself back to the room. "Yeah, she's asking for water," the nurse said. "And she asked who brought her in." Ethan stood too fast, the blood surging up, then dropping. He steadied himself with a hand on the chair. "Can my daughter?" Later the nurse said, gentle but firm. "Let's keep it quiet for the first few minutes." She glanced at Hunter. "He can come if he stays at the foot." "He'll stay," Ethan said. "He knows how." They walked the white corridor together, the nurse out front, Ethan following Hunter's nails, clicking soft, controlled. Doorways slid past, 1, 2, 3 single beds and beeping machines, and the smell of iodine and warmed blankets, and the human sound of someone somewhere crying into a pillow. Trauma 1. The nurse eased the door open. The room felt both loud and very, very quiet. Monitors clicked and hummed. Oxygen whispered. The fluorescent lights were dimmed. Outside the world was a wash of pale blue. Inside, Rachel Moore lay propped against pillows, hair clean, but still damp, a bandage wrapping her temple like a white question. Her eyes were open. Clearer than Ethan expected. A cop's eyes, he realized. They took inventory door window equipment, exits him and then Hunter. Something in her face loosened. Not relief exactly. Gratitude with caution folded into it. "Hey," Ethan said, stopping short of the bed. "I'm Ethan Cole," she said. Voice raw, low, but steady. Then with a small curve of her mouth. "And that's the hero." Hunter's tail wagged twice. He moved to the foot of the bed and put his head on the blanket with deliberate gentleness, as if he'd learned somewhere not to tug on tubes. Rachel's gaze went glassy for a second. Her fingers, those strong, nicked fingers, moved into his fur like they were finding a handhold on a cliff. She took a breath that sounded like winter air when the lungs burn. "I remember the cold," she said. Then warmth. Heat against my chest. Fur. The smell of a tremor. Dog. Life. Ethan let out a sound he hadn't known he was holding in. A small laugh. A swallow. Something human. He does that. My wife trained him. Search and rescue. He caught himself the past tense, catching his ribs in a familiar bruise. She was good at it. Rachel's eyes lifted to his. She saw it there, the shape of the loss, the way it still lived with him like a roommate. She nodded once, the way people who carry their own losses nod. Simple, respectful, no questions. "Water?" the nurse asked. Rachel nodded. Greed rising and shame following it, both very human. She took a sip, coughed once, tried again. The second sip stayed down. Color crept back into her mouth. The nurse adjusted a line, checked a monitor, made notes with a pen that clicked briskly. "I'm Lily's dad," Ethan said after a moment, as if that were the most important biography he possessed. Maybe it was. "We were driving." Hunter jumped out. "He doesn't do that unless—" He trailed, glancing at her bandage. "Unless he smells death," Rachel said, voice dry. Then softer. "Or life trying to leave." Ethan nodded. There were tire tracks, faint, coming off the road, going back. He watched her face as he said it, the smallest flinch. The kind of micro-expression you'd miss unless you'd been watching people very closely for years, or unless you were a parent. "What's the last thing you remember?" he asked. "Before the snow." She pinched her eyes shut for a second, as if light hurt. Memory hurt more. A curve. Headlights in the mirror. Then she made a small, helpless gesture. "It's all noise." The door opened softly. Dr. Martinez stepped in with the energy of a man who'd had 2 sips of coffee and 90 seconds of quiet. He looked at Rachel with professional warmth, then at Hunter with admiration he didn't bother to hide. "You were lucky," he said, checking her pupils with a penlight. "And also stubborn." She managed something like a smile. "Occupational hazard." Martinez turned the light off and pocketed it. "Concussion. You'll have headaches. You'll be tired. Things will slosh around in there for a bit. It'll pass. But concussion protocols mean you shouldn't be alone for 72 hours. Someone should wake you, monitor. You make sure your speech doesn't slur." He glanced at Ethan. "Make sure she doesn't decide to go chase bad guys." "That a medical order?" she asked, dry. "That's a medical plea," he said. "And yes, an order." Rachel's eyes drifted toward the window. Snow, endless and bright, lay across the parking lot. A plow made a slow pass the blade, throwing a scarf of white aside. "There's a motor lodge," she said, "reflex more than plan. Main Street." Martinez shook his head. "Closed last month." Murphy finally hung it up. "Then I'll find—" She stopped. She didn't have another noun ready. Motel, friend, safe house. None of those words lived here. Ethan heard himself speak before he measured the sentence. It was instinct, the same one that had shoved him out of the truck into the storm. "You can stay with us." She turned to him, startled, wary, grateful, all in one inhale. "Mr. Cole." "I don't know if it's Ethan," he said. "And it's not charity. It's logistics." He tried to make it sound like a spreadsheet. It wasn't. It was a man staring at a stranger's scars and hearing footsteps in the hall that sounded like trouble in human shoes. "We've got a spare room. Lily will be at school during the day." Hunter already voted. At the foot of the bed, Hunter thumped his tail once, then placed it carefully back along his flank, like he'd filed an official statement. Rachel looked at the dog, then at the man, then away. She breathed in shallow, out slower. The room seemed to contract around the question and expand around the answer. Dr. Ethan asked, deferring, needing a witness, maybe a permission slip he could wave at his future self when doubt walked in at 3 a.m. Martinez scratched at his jaw. "It's not a hospital, but she'll be safer in a house than in a motel that doesn't exist." He tucked his pen behind his ear. "If she agrees, I'll print the concussion sheet. You'll read it, twice." Rachel shut her eyes. For a moment she wasn't in the bed. She was in a hallway, a stairwell, a cold garage with a light that flickered at bad times. She saw a face, heard a voice, felt the shift in the air just before a hit comes. She opened her eyes. The man beside the bed was steady. The dog's presence hummed like a heartbeat you could lean against. The winter outside waited, but inside there was a small, warm gravity that felt like a choice. "I don't want to put your daughter in danger," she said, voice lower now. "True. All the way down to the bone." "Lily's already in danger," Ethan said, just as true, just as low. "From me lying to her, from me pretending that monsters don't wear badges. I won't let them near her, not without me in the doorway." Rachel studied him. He wasn't performing. He wasn't polishing a speech. He was a widower who had decided to be a wall. She had spent a career deciding when to be a door and when to be a blade. The calculus shifted. "Okay," she said. The word was small. It carried the weight of a squad car. For 72 hours. 72 hours, Ethan echoed. Then I'm gone, she added. Reflex self-preservation masquerading as courtesy. Then you're better, he corrected. And we'll see. The door cracked open. A small face peered around the corner. Dad, Lily whispered, then saw Rachel and flushed. Oh, sorry. It's all right, Martinez said, smiling. Come say hello, Miss Lily, and then let our detective rest. Lily tiptoed in boots squeaking. She held her drawing like a diploma. She stopped at the foot of the bed, mirrored Hunter without meaning to, side by side, girl and dog, sentinel and sentinel. I drew this, she said, lifting the paper with two gloved hands. It's you, in the snow. But you're not cold in the picture, because Hunter is there. Rachel took the drawing. The paper shook. She pressed her lips together, trying for composure. It came out as a tremulous smile. It's beautiful, she said, and meant it so completely that the air in the room seemed to warm a fraction. Thank you, Lily. You can sleep in our guest room, Lily announced, decisive as only children and generals are. It has the best window. The moon comes right there. She pointed to an imaginary square in the air. And Hunter can sleep on the rug, Lily Ethan said gently, a soft caution in the syllables. Rachel looked down at the drawing so Lily wouldn't see her eyes fill. The sketch dog had a heroic smile. The woman had a halo of pencil warmth. The snow looked like stars. Okay, Rachel said again, this time to the little girl who had offered her the moon. The monitors went on monitoring. The snow went on falling. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang twice and stopped. Martinez printed a discharge plan, the pages spooling out like a recipe for how to walk through the next 3 days without breaking. Ethan thanked the doctor, thanked the nurse, thanked the universe, or tried to. Gratitude comes out awkward when it has to squeeze past fear. He folded Lily's drawing, then unfolded it again, smoothed it on his thigh, and didn't fold it a second time. 72 hours. Rachel murmured, eyes on the window, voice finding a steadier pitch. We can do a lot in 3 days. Ethan heard the cop in that sentence, the strategist. He also heard the human being who'd almost been erased by a ditch full of snow and someone else's intent. He nodded once. We'll use every hour, he said. Hunter exhaled long and satisfied, as if a decision had been made he had been waiting for them to make. He shifted his weight, rested his chin on the quilt, and stared at the door like a soldier guarding a threshold. Outside, the storm began to tire. Inside, a different one prepared itself quietly. Not wind, not ice. People, plans, names. The kind that leaves no drifts but does leave scars. When the nurse dimmed the lights another notch and eased out, Ethan stepped back. Rest, he said. We'll be here. Rachel let her eyes fall closed. The dog's warmth at her feet. The child's drawing on the bed tray. The widower's voice in her ears, the kind that could hold a room steady even when the floor shifted. She let sleep climb toward her. She let it take her. On his way back to the waiting room to gather Lily's things, Ethan passed the vending machine against the far wall. In the reflection on its clouded plastic, he saw a shape move past the nurse's station, a tan coat, a pale gaze, a hat brim like a blade. He stopped breathing for a beat, then started again in short, silent measures. When he turned his head to look straight on, the corridor was empty. The machine's hum filled the space where footsteps might have been. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself the sheriff had gone home. Hunter, back in the room, opened one eye and looked at the door without lifting his head. Then he closed his eye again, but not all the way. Rest would come, but not easily, and not for long. Morning broke across Montana like a bruise, gray, heavy, spreading slowly over the town. The blizzard had weakened, though its remnants still swirled in the air, a restless ghost refusing to let go. Icicles clung to the hospital's awning, dripping slowly drop by drop, as if measuring time with cold precision. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered with a low hum. Machines beeped in steady intervals. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse pushed a cart, the wheels squeaking against waxed linoleum. Ethan sat slumped in a chair beside the bed, a styrofoam cup of coffee cooling in his hand. His beard was damp from melting snow that had refused to dry overnight. Dark circles pooled beneath his eyes. He had dozed in fragments, never fully sleeping, always half alert like a soldier standing guard. Lily was curled in the second chair, knees to her chest head, pillowed on her folded arms. Her sketchbook was clutched against her stomach, a crayon still loosely pinched between her fingers. Hunter, loyal as always, stretched across the foot of the bed, his golden fur pressed against the thin blanket. His chest rose and fell in rhythm with the woman lying above him. Rachel stirred. Her eyelids fluttered once, then again, heavy with the weight of both medication and pain. Her hand moved instinctively to her temple, finding the bandage that still wrapped her head. She inhaled sharply when the ache reminded her what had been done. A faint moan escaped enough to pull Ethan from his half-sleep. He straightened, set the coffee down, leaned forward. "You're awake," he said, voice low, threaded with relief. Rachel's eyes opened fully now, adjusting to the dim light. She blinked at him, then at Hunter, then finally at the child curled like a fragile bird in the chair. Confusion flickered, then clarity. "You're... Ethan?" She rasped, her throat raw. He nodded. "Ethan Cole. That's Lily." He gestured gently toward his daughter. "And that's Hunter." Her eyes softened at the sight of the retriever, her hand reaching almost instinctively toward the fur beneath the blanket. Hunter's tail thumped once deliberate, as though confirming recognition. Rachel swallowed. "Your dog saved my life." Hunter wagged again, eyes steady, as if he understood every word. Ethan leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. "He's good at that. My wife." He stopped, drew in a breath. She trained him. Before she passed. Rachel's lips parted. Her eyes met his, lingering with something unspoken. She saw the grief resting there, a shadow carved deep. She didn't push. She didn't need to. Instead, she whispered, "I remember. Cold. Snow swallowing me. Then, warmth. It was him. Pressed against me. I thought I was gone. Then I wasn't." Her voice cracked. "The memory of almost dying is never neat." Ethan cleared his throat, searching for steadiness. "You held on. That's what matters." Rachel looked at him, then really looked. The tired but strong face, the rough hands still gripping his knees as though he needed something solid, the way his daughter trusted sleep in his presence, and the dog steadfast at her feet, eyes like sentinels in the dark. "I owe you all more than I can say," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "You don't owe us. You owe yourself to keep fighting." Silence followed, thick and human, the kind where truths hang unspoken. Then Lily stirred. She stretched, yawned, rubbed her eyes with tiny fists. When she noticed Rachel awake, she gasped, springing upright. "You're alive," Lily blurted, innocent, stripping away hesitation. She scrambled forward, holding up her sketchbook with pride. "I drew this. It's you and Hunter. In the snow." She thrust the drawing onto Rachel's lap. Crayon lines showed a woman lying in drifts, a golden dog pressed to her side. Around them, swirling blue lines for the storm, little stars of white pencil for snowflakes. Rachel's hands trembled as she held it. Tears blurred her vision. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Truly beautiful. Thank you." Lily beamed, shoulders straightening, pride glowing in her small frame. Rachel reached out fingers, brushing the girl's cheek with careful tenderness. "You have a brave heart," she said. Hunter leaned closer, his nose nudging Lily's knee as though seconding the observation. Ethan watched the exchange, chest tightening in ways he hadn't felt in years. The sight of his daughter's innocence touching the broken edges of a stranger. The sight of that stranger letting her guard down, if only for a heartbeat. The moment fractured when the door clicked open. A nurse entered, followed by Dr. Martinez. He carried a clipboard, his expression composed but cautious. "Detective Moore," he greeted gently. Rachel shifted against the pillows. "Rachel," she corrected quietly. "Detective can wait." Martinez nodded. "Rachel, you're stable enough to leave, but with conditions. Concussion protocols require supervision for at least 72 hours. Do you have family nearby?" Her lips pressed together. The pause stretched long. "No. No family here." The doctor raised his brows. "Friends, colleagues." Rachel's gaze flicked briefly to Ethan, then away. "No. Just work contacts." Martinez's frown deepened. "Then I can't recommend you stay alone." "I'll be fine," Rachel said, her tone a little too quick. No, Ethan interrupted, voice firmer than his own thoughts had prepared. You won't. Rachel turned, startled. The motor lodge is closed, Ethan continued. Nowhere else safe. Stay with us, just until you're strong enough. Lily clapped her hands together, her joy unfiltered. Yes, she can sleep in Mommy's old room. The words froze the air. Ethan's breath hitched. His hand gripped the chair until his knuckles whitened. Rachel's face softened, guilt rippling through her features. I didn't mean to, Lily stammered, realizing too late the landmine she'd stepped on. It's okay, honey, Ethan said quickly, forcing a thin smile. He looked at Rachel, voice quieter. The guest room will be perfect. Rachel studied him. She saw the pain hiding beneath the mask, the way his shoulders tensed. She reached her fingers, brushing his flannel sleeve, light but firm. If this is too much, she murmured, I'll find somewhere else. I don't want to reopen wounds. Hunter stood turned, looked at both of them, then padded toward the door. He sat tail swishing, once gaze expectant. His silent message was clear. Home. Ethan exhaled slowly. The decision once spoken became a weight he could not set down. Lisa would have insisted he said his wife's name, tasting both sweet and bitter. She'd be furious if I left you out in the cold. Rachel closed her eyes briefly. Gratitude, sorrow, hesitation all folded into one. Then, thank you. That night the Carter house waited at the end of Maple Street, wrapped in snow, and silence lace curtains faintly yellowed at the edges, a white fence bowed beneath frost. A place that looked like a painting, like safety. But for Ethan, Rachel, Lily, and Hunter, it was about to become the center of a storm no weather report had warned them about. The Carter house stood against the fading storm, like something from a half-forgotten painting. White-clapboard walls, weathered but sturdy, a porch that wrapped around the front, and a tire swing dangling from the old oak tree out front, its rope frozen stiff with ice. Snow blanketed the yard in an untouched sheet, muffling every sound, softening every edge. But underneath that quiet lay the unspoken weight of a home marked by loss. Ethan parked the truck engine, ticking in protest as it cooled. He stepped out first, boots crunching in the snow, then turned to help Rachel from the cab. Her legs were shaky stiff from hospital rest and the bruises blooming under her uniform. Hunter jumped down gracefully, circling once before trotting toward the porch tail high, as if announcing they had returned to safe ground. Lily bounded out next, backpack swinging from her shoulder, a grin lighting her small face. This is our house, she announced proudly, as though it were a castle and not a modest two-story that creaked in winter. You're going to love it, Miss Rachel. Wait until you see the swing? Rachel smiled, though her face was pale, her body fragile. It's beautiful, she said softly, her gaze lingering on the garden beds, dormant now, but clearly once cared for by a tender hand. She noticed the lace curtains neat but a little frayed. The porch railing, painted white, bore small chips where a child's hands had likely gripped too tightly, and the photographs she glimpsed through the front window frames where one face had been cut away like a wound hidden in plain sight. Inside, warmth spread from the wood stove, its iron belly glowing the air thick with the smell of burning cedar. Ethan carried Rachel's small overnight bag, while Lily kicked off her boots, scattering clumps of snow across the entryway. Hunter shook himself, sending a spray of melted flakes across the floor. Hunter Lily laughed, trying to brush him down with a towel. You're all wet. Rachel stepped carefully into the living room, her boots squeaking on the old wood. Her eyes traced every detail, the hand-carved shelves holding mismatched books, the faded sofa with a quilt draped across it, the family photos on the mantel, where Lisa's smile had been carefully trimmed out of each frame. It was a home still breathing through grief, a house that tried to look whole when it wasn't. Daddy Lily asked suddenly, innocent curiosity, sharp as ever, Can Miss Rachel sleep in Mommy's room? The question cut through the air like an axe. Ethan froze, mid-step, bag dangling from his hand, his jaw clenched, his eyes clouded. The weight of memory pressed hard enough that even Hunter paused tail, stilling as though sensing the shift. Rachel's breath caught. Lily, sweetheart, she said gently, the guest room will be just fine. I don't want to take anyone's place. Ethan found his voice low and rough. The guest room's ready. That'll be perfect. He turned, avoiding Rachel's eyes, and carried her bag down the narrow hall. She followed slowly, fingertips grazing the wallpaper, its floral pattern faded to ghosts. At the end of the hall, Ethan opened a door into a small but welcoming space. A bed neatly made, a dresser, a lamp with a chipped shade, and curtains that framed the window like soft arms. Rachel stepped inside, lowering herself onto the bed with care. She pressed her palm against the quilt, feeling its warmth, the fabric worn but clean. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan stood awkwardly in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame. "If it's too much, if it stirs up things, you just say the word. I'll take you back to town." Rachel shook her head. "You've already done more than enough. I'll manage." She hesitated, then added, "I don't want to bring trouble here. Not to you. Not to Lily." His eyes met hers. In them she saw the steady resolve of a man who had already lost everything once and wasn't willing to let someone else slip away. "Lisa would have wanted me to help," he said quietly, "and I'm not about to let you walk out into danger." Hunter padded into the room, then circled once and flopped onto the rug beside the bed, his body curling protectively at her feet. His tail wagged once, then stilled as if confirming the matter was settled. Rachel smiled faintly, reaching down to stroke his fur. "Seems like he's decided for us." For the first time that day, Ethan's lips curved into something like a smile. "Yeah, he usually knows best." That night the house fell into the rhythm of sleep. Lily's laughter faded into dreams upstairs. The wood stove crackled, filling the air with the scent of cedar. But Rachel lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, the quilt pulled to her chin. Hunter breathed steadily at her side, but his ears twitched with every creak of the house, every groan of winter pressing against the walls. She thought of Denver, of the case that had brought her here, of the faces she'd been chasing, of the sheriff's pale eyes. And she thought of Ethan, quiet, steady, haunted. A man who carried loss like a shadow, but who still opened his door to a stranger bleeding in the snow. Her chest tightened. Gratitude, guilt, fear. They all tangled together, making sleep impossible. Through the thin walls, she heard Ethan moving downstairs, the clink of dishes, the shuffle of papers, the slow, heavy tread of a man filling empty hours with tasks that didn't need doing. She closed her eyes, listening to the sound of him, listening to the sound of a house that had opened itself to her. Hunter shifted closer, laying his head across her ankle, a warm weight, a promise. His amber eyes flicked open once, catching the slice of moonlight through the curtains. He stared at the door as though keeping watch, as though he already knew the storm outside wasn't finished with them yet. Rachel whispered into the darkness, her voice barely audible. "What did you see out there, boy? What do you know that I don't?" Hunter's tail thumped once against the rug, silent, assured. Rachel closed her eyes again. Sleep came in pieces, broken by flashes of headlights, by the memory of ice on her skin, by the shadow of the sheriff's smile. Morning would come soon. With it questions. With it choices. And the quiet sanctuary of the Carter house would begin to crack under the weight of secrets carried in from the snow. Breakfast began with sound. The house woke not to an alarm, but to the soft percussion of a skillet, heating the whisper of bacon easing into a pan, the low burble of coffee in the machine. Pipes ticked, floorboards murmured, and the stove exhaled warmth into the winter air. Light crept across the kitchen tiles, pale and thin, filtered through frost-feathered glass. Outside, snow still covered the street, though the blizzard's rage had settled into a hush, as if the world itself were pausing to breathe. Ethan moved with the steady rhythm of a man who knew tasks by heart. Ladle rising and falling, batter spreading in golden circles, pancakes flipping with practiced grace. His motions were careful, unhurried, the kind of care born of routine and necessity. At the table, Lily perched with a pencil behind her ear, her hair wild from sleep, boots half-laced at her feet. She hummed to herself, sketching Hunter with exaggerated muscles and a cape. The golden retriever sprawled loyally beside her chin, resting on her socked toes, accepting accidental crumbs with quiet dignity. Rachel lingered in the doorway. She didn't step in at first. She simply watched, letting the warmth of the scene reach her before she claimed a place in it. The air carried the scent of cedar smoke, maple syrup, and the faint metallic tang of snow melting in the vents. The ache in her skull pulsed, but it felt farther away here, thinned by the ordinary chaos of family life. Ethan glanced up. "Morning." His voice was low, steady, a word meant to be a blanket. "Morning," she echoed, her throat still rough. He nodded toward the chair. "Sit. You're on light duty. Fork napkin breathing." Rachel's lips twitched. "I can handle 2 of those. Which 2? "We'll find out." Lily's head popped up. "You're awake?" "Awake," she declared, flipping her sketchbook. "Tell me your favorite animal that isn't Hunter. I need new material." Rachel moved carefully to the chair, grateful for something solid beneath her. "Owls," she said after a pause. "They listen before they move." Lily considered this with solemnity. Owls are wise, but they can't wag their tails. She returned to her drawing. Hunter still wins. The dog thumped his tail once, sealing the verdict. Ethan slid a plate in front of Rachel pancakes and a neat stack bacon curled in an arc, a square of butter beginning to melt. He placed a mug beside it, steam curling into the air. The coffee's warmth reached her even before the taste did, settling against her like a quiet hand. "You don't have to cook for me," she murmured. "I like to," Ethan said, flipping another pancake. "Makes the house feel less empty." The words hung between them, simple, unadorned. Rachel's fork hovered in midair. She saw Lisa in the empty spaces, the careful curtains, the spice jars lined just so. Love leaves fingerprints. Grief tries to erase them. Living brings them back. Lily whispered into Hunter's ear, "She likes owls. That means she used to be sad, but now she's getting better." The retriever blinked at her, perhaps understanding, perhaps just angling for another crumb. Rachel cut a small piece of pancake. The flavor was ordinary and perfect. "This is good." "Credit the griddle," Ethan said. "It handles pressure better than I do." "And better than the sheriff?" Lily added impulsively, then clapped a hand over her mouth. Rachel spoke before the silence grew sharp. "It's all right. You can say what you feel in your own kitchen." Ethan's glance toward her carried a quiet gratitude. He shifted to Lily. "Boots, hat, gloves." "The bus won't wait." "Layers," Lily said, pulling scarves from the basket by the door. "Dad always hides hand warmers in my backpack." "I know you know," Ethan said. "That's why I hide too." Rachel sipped her coffee, watching them move around each other with an ease she hadn't felt in years. It was dangerous, this kind of watching. Attachment could cut deep. But Hunter pressed lightly against her shin, as though reminding her that sometimes rules don't save you. "People do." "Headache?" Ethan asked quietly. "About a 3, she said. "Dizzy if I move too fast." "Then we'll keep it slow," he answered. She laughed once, surprised at the sound. She hadn't heard herself laugh in months. When Lily was finally bundled and ready, Ethan walked her out to the curb, Hunter trotting proudly beside her. Rachel stayed in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame, watching them cross the snowy yard. Father, daughter, dog, like a single shape stitched together by devotion. The school bus sighed to a stop, its doors opening with a hiss. Lily hugged Ethan, kissed Hunter's nose, then darted back to Rachel. She reached up on tiptoe, pressing her mitten to Rachel's cheek. "Be careful," she whispered. "You can borrow my owl." Rachel swallowed hard. "I'll return it with interest." Lily grinned, then climbed aboard. The bus swallowed her, carried her down the road. Hunter stood watching until it disappeared, then turned back, his job done. Back inside, Ethan set a glass of water in front of Rachel. "Doctor's orders," he said. "Walk a little, drink, rest, repeat." She raised the glass, her smile faint. Board-certified in decency. He looked away at that, embarrassed, though a trace of warmth lingered in his face. They moved slowly through the downstairs, Rachel holding the back of a chair for balance. Ethan filled the silence with stories of ordinary things. The neighbor's broken sink, the oak tree that dropped its swing last summer. Lily's insistence that gravity was personally rude. Rachel stopped once, hand-pressing the sofa. "I'm using you," she said bluntly. Ethan met her gaze. "Then use us toward daylight," he answered. Her lips parted, caught between warning and gratitude. "Pieces of the truth," she said finally. "That's all I can give you now. My contact in Denver sent word, trust no one. That doesn't happen unless the rot goes higher than a sheriff." "Then we gather," Ethan said. His voice was steady like stone. Quietly. "You play the part. We'll play the cover. She looked at him at the man who had opened his door in a storm. You don't even know how dangerous this is. He shook his head. I know enough. I know my daughter is safer when the truth is out than when it's hidden. Hunter shifted suddenly. He rose, ears, pricked gaze locked on the lace curtain at the front window. His body stiffened, the fur along his spine rising. What is it? Ethan asked, already stepping closer. Rachel moved beside him, hand tightening around the back of a chair. Together they peered out. The street looked ordinary, a neighbor shoveling his walk, snow drifted from the rooftops. Nothing wrong, nothing obvious. Hunter growled low, then exhaled. Laying back down as if satisfied he had made his point. Rachel whispered, I hate that I trust him more than a badge. Then trust him, Ethan said. They returned to the kitchen, both carrying the silence of that warning. Rachel sank onto the couch, fatigue pulling at her again. Ethan fetched a cardboard box from the closet, setting it on the coffee table. Inside were photographs Lisa in the kitchen flower on her cheek. Lily gripping Hunter's ears when she was a toddler. Ethan sifted through them, each picture a weight, each picture a release. Rachel studied one quietly. She was beautiful. She was loud. Ethan corrected gently, his eyes shining, and brave. For a moment the room was softer, grief turning into memory. Then came the knock. 3 raps. A pause. 2 more. Exact, deliberate. Hunter's growl began in his chest, rising like thunder far away. Ethan met Rachel's eyes. No words, just a shared understanding. She nodded once. He placed his hand on the doorknob, then drew it back, the air between them tightening. The house listened. The winter listened. And so did the man standing outside on the porch. The knock hung in the air like an echo rattling around the quiet rooms of the Carter house. Hunter had already planted himself in front of the door. Body stiff, tail low, ears pricked toward the wood. His growl vibrated like a low engine idling, waiting for Ethan's command. Rachel's pulse climbed. She rose halfway from the couch before the room tilted, a flash of dizziness, reminding her of the concussion. She gripped the armrest hard, forcing her body still. Her eyes never left the door. Ethan stood motionless. His hand hovered just above the knob, but didn't touch it. 3 seconds passed. Then 4. The silence pressed like another weight. The knock came again, slower this time. 3 raps. A pause. 2 more. Exact. Who is it? Ethan's voice carried steady, but Rachel heard the tension coiled inside it. A pause. Then a voice. Smooth calm, threaded with ownership. Sheriff Dalton Briggs, just checking in. Rachel's stomach dropped. Her fingers clenched around the fabric of the couch. Hunter barked once sharp before dropping back to a guttural growl. Ethan slid a look at her. A silent question. Do I open it? Rachel shook her head, lips pressed tight, but Briggs's voice came again, louder this time. Ethan, you gonna leave your sheriff standing out here in the cold? That's not very neighborly. Ethan exhaled slowly. He bent, whispered to Hunter, a sound too low for Rachel to catch. The dog's growl softened, though his body remained a barrier. Stay where you are, Ethan murmured to Rachel. Then he opened the door. Snow swept in first, a rush of cold air curling around boots and coats, and then Briggs filled the frame, broad shoulders dusted with flakes, pale eyes cutting into the warm interior like blades. He stepped in without waiting, stomping snow off his boots, gaze sliding over the room like a searchlight. Cozy, he said, as though the word were an accusation. His eyes lingered on the stove, the breakfast plate still in the sink, Lily's crayons scattered across the table. Then they landed on Rachel. Well now, he said softly. Detective Moore. On her feet already. Rachel kept her face calm, her body still. Sheriff? Doctors must work miracles here, Briggs continued, peeling his gloves off finger by finger. A couple days ago, you were half dead in the snow. Now you're having pancakes. Ethan's jaw flexed. She's recovering. Doctor's orders were rest, not interrogation. Briggs's smile was all teeth, no warmth. Just a friendly visit. Wanted to hear directly from the detective herself before state police arrive. You know how paperwork likes every detail. He pulled his notebook from his coat pocket again, the click of his pen loud in the small room. He didn't sit. He stood tall, filling space, his posture calculated. Rachel's pulse hammered in her temple. She forced her voice steady. I remember driving up the pass. Weather deteriorated. Next thing I knew, I woke in the hospital. That's it. Briggs tilted his head. That's it. Head injuries, Ethan interjected. Doctor said memory can be patchy. Briggs's gaze shifted. Funny, she can remember medical advice, but not how she ended up face down in my county's snow. Hunter took a step forward, teeth barely bared a sound like thunder rolling deep in his chest. Control your animal, Briggs said flatly, though he didn't move closer. He's reading you, Ethan replied evenly. Rachel could feel the air thickening, each second stretched tight. She thought of her FBI contact's warning, trust no one. She thought of the tire tracks in the snow. She thought of Briggs's eyes, pale as death, calculating as a ledger. Briggs clicked his pen shut, sliding it back into his pocket. Denver PD will be sending someone. We'll get to the bottom of why a detective from another state nearly bled out in our mountains. He paused, then added, and why she ended up here. The weight of his words pressed down hard. Not a question, a warning. He tugged his hat lower, pulled his gloves back on, and stepped back into the doorway. You take care now, Ethan. Wouldn't want this storm to claim any more lives. The door closed. The snowstorm's howl filled the silence he left behind. Rachel exhaled shakily, realizing she had been holding her breath the whole time. Ethan locked the door hand lingering on the bolt. His shoulders were tight, his jaw set. He turned his eyes, meeting hers. You're not here for an accident, he said quietly, though the words landed like a hammer. Rachel's throat closed. She wanted to lie. She wanted to say yes, but Hunter moved to her side, pressing against her leg, his body warm, grounding. His eyes fixed on her with something that felt like insistence. Ethan sat opposite her, leaning forward, voice steady but firm. Tell me the truth. You dragged my family into this the second you collapsed in the snow. I can't protect Lily from shadows. I need to know what we're fighting. Rachel's lips trembled. Silence stretched. Hunter pressed closer. Ethan didn't move, didn't look away. Finally, Rachel spoke. I came here to investigate Sheriff Briggs, she whispered. And what I've found, her eyes closed briefly. Corruption. Tampered evidence. People who should be alive but aren't. He's not just a sheriff, Ethan. He's part of something bigger. Something that doesn't want me breathing. The room went very still. Ethan's hand curled into a fist against the table. His voice dropped to a whisper, sharp as broken glass. Then we're already at war. Hunter's growl rumbled again, deeper this time, as if to say he'd known all along. The house was silent after Briggs left, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the heavy kind, the kind that hummed through walls, filled every corner, and pressed against skin until it felt like armor cracking. Rachel sat stiff on the couch, her hands clenched in her lap, staring at the door as though the sheriff's shadow still lingered there. Hunter paced once back and forth, nails clicking on the hardwood before settling at her side, his head angled to rest on her thigh. His steady weight was grounding, but her pulse still raced. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, the muscle in his jaw working like a stone caught in the river of his face. He studied her, waiting. Not demanding, just waiting. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but implacable. Start talking. Rachel looked down at Hunter, fingers threading into his fur. If I tell you, you can't unknow it. And if Briggs even suspects what you know, Ethan cut her off. He already suspects. He stood in my house and tried to measure how much I'd break. So either you tell me now or I send you back into that storm and hope you're gone before he decides to come back. Her head snapped up, eyes flashing. You'd really throw me out after saving me. His stare held steady. Not throw you out, protect my daughter. I buried one woman I loved. I won't bury my little girl because someone else's fight walked through my door. The air cracked between them. For a moment, only the pop of the stove fire filled the room. Rachel exhaled, shaking her head, voice trembling against the confession. Briggs isn't just a crooked sheriff. He's running a pipeline. Evidence disappears. Witnesses vanish. Cases collapse. Some of the missing children, Ethan. Women. They never resurface. I came here to trace it, to document enough to make it stick. But the net is bigger than him. Files suggest state connections, even federal ties. Briggs is a small-town face for something national. Ethan absorbed the words like a blow to the gut. His hand gripped the doorframe tighter. "And you're saying they tried to silence you out there on the pass?" Rachel nodded. "Yes. Someone knew where I'd be, knew my route. They forced me off the road, dragged me out, and left me there to freeze. Briggs made sure he arrived at the hospital not as rescuer but to intimidate. He wants me gone before Denver sends backup." Hunter growled low, the sound vibrating against her legs. Ethan stepped forward, lowering himself into the chair opposite her. His dark eyes met hers, steady, solid. "So what's your plan?" Rachel's lips twisted. "I had one. Gather evidence, survive long enough to hand it over to the Bureau. But my contact in Denver..." She hesitated. "They warned me before I blacked out, trust no one. Which means the rot isn't just here. It runs deeper. I don't know who in law enforcement I can turn to." Ethan sat back, slowly exhaling through his nose. His gaze flicked to Lily's crayon drawings scattered on the table, then back to Rachel. "Then it's just us." Rachel's throat tightened. "I didn't want to drag you into this." "You didn't have a choice," Ethan said, voice hard. "Neither do I." Briggs looked at my daughter like she was leverage. That was enough. Hunter lifted his head, ears pricked as if affirming Ethan's words. Rachel's chest ached with a strange mixture, guilt, yes, but also a spark of something she hadn't felt in months. Not trust. Not yet. But the possibility of it. "You're a handyman," she said softly, almost accusing. "What can you possibly do against men like him?" Ethan's mouth curved into something grim, almost humorless. "Fix things. Break things. Slip into places nobody notices. People talk when they think I'm just patching a wall. And my wife..." His voice faltered, then steadied. She trained Hunter. She believed he could read danger better than any man. Turns out she was right. Rachel studied him. He wasn't boasting. He was laying out the quiet truth of his life. Tools, survival, observation. Skills people underestimated until they mattered. "Then we're in this together," she said, her voice a thread of steel beneath the exhaustion. Ethan leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "No. Understand me. If Briggs pushes, if things go sideways, Lily comes first. Always. I will burn this whole town to ash before I let him touch her." Rachel held his gaze. "I wouldn't ask for anything else." Silence stretched again, but it was different now. Not emptiness. Agreement. A pact forged in shadows and necessity. Hunter stood suddenly, muscles tense, head snapping toward the window. His tail stiffened, a warning flag. Ethan rose instantly, moving to the curtain. He parted it just enough to peer out. A car idled across the street. Black. Windows tinted too dark for a town this small. The exhaust puffed steady clouds into the cold morning air. Rachel's pulse spiked. They're watching. Ethan let the curtain fall back. His face was stone. Then we moved carefully, every step. Hunter pressed his body against Rachel's leg, eyes locked on the window. The Golden Guard braced for whatever storm waited just beyond the glass. Inside the Carter house, the fire crackled, a fragile circle of warmth. But outside, the game had already begun, and the enemy was no longer hidden. The black sedan didn't leave. Its engine rumbled low, a mechanical heartbeat pulsing across the frozen street. Exhaust curled into the air, white against the blue morning, vanishing into the cold like breath from a hidden predator. Rachel sat on the couch, body-rigid eyes fixed on the window, though the curtain was drawn. Every instinct screamed trap. She had lived with the paranoia long enough to know when her fear was justified and when it wasn't. This time, it was justified. Hunter hadn't moved from his post at the window. His body was angled forward, ears pricked tail, stiff muscles tense in the way that spoke louder than words. Danger. His low growl was steady now, a drumbeat against the silence. Ethan stood at the table, hands braced on the wood knuckles, pale. His mind was already turning gears the way it did when he had to fix a machine with missing parts. Only this time, the broken system was his entire town. "Could be state police," he muttered, though his tone carried no belief. Rachel shook her head. "State police don't sit in tinted sedans across from houses at dawn. That's surveillance." Briggs's men... Her throat tightened. or worse. The Bureau's compromised. My last contact warned me trust no one. If they know I'm here, it isn't because Briggs alone told them. It means the leak runs higher. Maybe all the way to Denver. Ethan exhaled sharply, dragging a hand over his beard. He glanced at the stairs at Lily's closed bedroom door. She was still asleep, breathing safe for now, in the cocoon of blankets, dreaming children's dreams. But every second that car idled outside her world tilted closer to something that would shatter it. Rachel leaned forward, pressing a palm against her temple where the bandage still sat. I need to send a message, coded, encrypted. If my Bureau contact is still clean, they'll know what it means. If not... She stopped, her voice fracturing. If not, Ethan finished grimly, we know we're alone. Hunter gave a short bark, one loud snap of sound, then went back to his growl. It was as if he understood every word, punctuating the truth they already felt. Ethan grabbed his coat. We're not staying in this house, not with Lily upstairs and that car out there. Rachel rose unsteady but resolute. Where would you go? He paused. Eyes dark. There's a workshop out back. From the road, you can't see the windows. If I angle a mirror through the side, I'll know how many are inside that car. Who's watching? Ethan. He held up a hand. If I don't check, then we're sitting ducks. If I do check, at least I know what storm is about to hit my family. Rachel's chest tightened. This wasn't his fight. She dragged him into it. And yet the way he spoke, steady, practical, protective, left no room for argument. I'll come with you, she said. The hell you will? He snapped, sharper than he intended. Then softer. You're barely standing. You stay here. Watch Lily. Hunter stays with you. Hunter barked once as though disagreeing with the division of duties. Ethan crouched, staring into the dog's amber eyes. Guard them, he said firmly. No one in. No one near. Hunter licked his hand-tail, swishing once in reluctant agreement. Rachel's eyes followed Ethan as he pulled on gloves and hat, his silhouette filling the doorway. The door creaked as he eased it open, letting in a knife of cold air before slipping out. The seconds stretched. Rachel stood at the window, breath fogging the glass. She pulled the curtain aside just enough to see Ethan move low across the yard, his figure blending into the snowbanks. He slid into the side of the workshop, vanishing from sight. Her pulse drummed in her ears. She counted breaths. She listened for the sound of an engine revving, doors slamming, men shouting. But the sedan remained still, a predator content to watch. Upstairs, Lily's footsteps pattered. Rachel forced calm into her voice. Morning, sweetheart? She called even as her throat threatened to close. Breakfast is still on the table. Lily descended in striped socks, hair tangled, clutching a stuffed animal. She blinked at Rachel, then at Hunter, growling low at the window. Why is he doing that? Rachel forced a smile. Just keeping watch. That's his job. Hunter flicked his ears back as if to agree. Minutes later, Ethan returned. Snow dusted his shoulders, his breath sharp in the cold air as he closed the door behind him. Well, Rachel asked too quickly. His face was grim. Two men inside. Suits. Not locals. They've got binoculars. They're not even trying to hide the surveillance. Rachel's stomach dropped. Then it's not Briggs alone. This is higher. Ethan nodded. They're waiting, watching, measuring how we move. Lily's small voice cut in. Daddy, who's outside? The air went still. Rachel's heart clenched. Ethan knelt, pulling his daughter close, speaking in the voice he used when storms knocked out power, and she was scared of the dark. Just some people keeping an eye on things. Nothing you need to worry about. I'll keep you safe. Her eyes searched his, innocent but sharp. Promise, he whispered. Rachel turned away, blinking, hard guilt burning in her chest. She was the reason those men were there. She was the reason Lily needed promises of safety at all. Ethan rose, jaw set. We can't stay passive. If they're watching, then they know you're alive. And if Briggs knows you're alive, then he's planning the next move, Rachel whispered. And if he moves before Denver arrives? Hunter growled again, louder now, staring at the window as though he could already see the next step in the game. Ethan placed his hand on the dog's head, steady grounding. Then he looked at Rachel, his eyes full of a resolve that cut through her fear. Then we don't wait, he said. We move first. The fire popped in the stove. Snow slid from the roof outside. The sedan's engine purred steady as ever. And inside the Carter house, lines were being drawn quietly without ceremony, but unbreakable. The sedan never left. It sat like a shadow pinned to the curb, its dark windows reflecting nothing, its engine a low growl under the winter morning. For hours, it didn't move, didn't blink, didn't flinch, just watched. Inside the Carter house, the tension thickened with each tick of the clock. Even Lily, who usually filled the space with chatter and crayons and laughter, had gone quiet. She perched on the rug beside Hunter, small hands stroking the retriever's fur as though she could anchor herself to his steady presence. Rachel sat near the window posture, straight jaw tight. Every muscle in her body ached to do something, to move, to fight, but the concussion still dragged at her, pulling her into dizzy spells whenever she stood too quickly. She hated the weakness, hated that Ethan's kindness had become both her refuge and her guilt. Ethan moved through the house like a man preparing for a storm that hadn't yet broken. He checked locks, pulled curtains tighter, set a kettle on the stove. But his movements weren't only domestic, they were tactical. He was gauging sight lines, testing hinges, considering escape routes, even as he buttered toast for his daughter. When Lily excused herself to fetch another blanket from upstairs, Rachel whispered, "This can't go on." Surveillance means escalation. The longer they sit there, the closer we are to Briggs knocking again, or worse. Ethan leaned against the counter, arms crossed. His gaze was steady, dark. "You said you needed to send a message." "Yes, but I can't do it from here. The house might already be tapped. Briggs's people could intercept it. I need neutral ground." He thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "The post office, public computer. Half the town uses it for online orders. Nobody would notice you." Rachel hesitated. "Too visible. If Briggs has watchers inside?" "Then we go smart," Ethan said. His voice carried the quiet authority of a man who'd fixed problems all his life, some with wrenches, some with grit. "I'll go about my day. Folks expect me to. Handyman jobs are cover. You'll walk in like you're picking up mail. Hunter will be with you. Nobody questions him." Rachel's eyes searched his. "And if they do, then we'll improvise," he said simply. Hunter thumped his tail once, as if already signing off on the plan. The walk to town felt like crossing a minefield. Snow squeaked under their boots, the cold biting at every exposed patch of skin. Rachel kept her scarf high around her jaw hat, pulled low. Ethan carried a toolbox, his cover story plain in the way he trudged down the street. Hunter walked pressed to Rachel's side, every step deliberate golden fur bright against the snow. His head swiveled constantly, ears twitching at sounds no human could catch. The sedan pulled away from the curb once they turned onto Main Street. Slow, deliberate. It didn't try to hide itself. "They're letting us know," Rachel muttered, breath clouding the air. "They want us nervous." "They succeeded," Ethan said under his breath, though his stride never faltered. The post office door jingled as they entered. Warmth, fluorescent lights, the faint smell of old envelopes and printer ink. A clerk nodded absently from behind the counter. Rachel moved quickly to the row of public terminals. She sat logged in, her fingers flying over the keyboard with the precision of muscle memory. She typed the coded request, short, clinical, disguised in layers of everyday phrasing that only her bureau contact would recognize. Hunter sat at her feet, gaze locked on the doorway, tail twitching once with every passerby. Ethan loitered near the bulletin board, pretending to read flyers for piano lessons and missing pets. His toolbox rested at his boots, but his eyes flicked constantly, measuring everyone who walked in. The reply came back faster than Rachel expected. Too fast. She opened it, heart pounding. The words chilled her blood. Case compromised. Trust no one in law enforcement. Federal connections confirmed. Corruption extends to cabinet level. Maintain cover. Await extraction instructions. Her hands went cold on the keyboard. She stared until the letters blurred. Rachel Ethan's voice was low but sharp. She turned her face pale. "It's bigger than I thought. Briggs isn't just a corrupt sheriff. He's tied to federal players. This isn't about a county or a town. It's a network." Ethan's jaw tightened, which means if they want you gone, they won't stop. Rachel finished, voice hollow. Hunter suddenly stiffened. His ears pricked, hackles rising. He growled, the sound vibrating against the floor. Rachel followed his gaze. Through the glass door of the post office, she saw it. Briggs's patrol car rolling slowly down Main Street. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. His presence alone was the message. Her stomach nodded. He knows I'm here. Then we leave. Now Ethan said, already reaching for his toolbox. Rachel logged out, hands trembling, nearly fumbling the keys. She stood moving fast. Hunter pressed close at her thigh. Together they slipped out the side door, taking the alley instead of the street. The cold air bit at her face. Snow crunched under boots. Somewhere behind them, an engine revved. Hunter barked once, sharp and urgent, pulling ahead. His nose lifted, ears locked on something down the alley. Rachel felt adrenaline surge sharp and hot, but Ethan's hand on her arm steadied her. "Keep moving," he said. She did. But every step felt like one closer to the line where watching would end and action would begin. And when that line was crossed, she knew none of them would walk away unchanged. The alley was narrow, hemmed in by brick walls veined with frost. Snow had drifted high against garbage bins and the back steps of shuttered shops. The air smelled faintly of old grease and wet cardboard. Their boots crunched too loudly on the icy ground, every step echoing like a flare against the silence. Hunter trotted ahead, body low head, swiveling with deliberate precision. His growl rumbled now and then, short bursts, as though he were talking in a language Ethan and Rachel could only half understand. Behind them, the faint hum of an engine crawled closer. Tires hissed on snow. A door slammed somewhere out of sight. Ethan tightened his grip on the toolbox in his right hand. His jaw-clenched muscles ticking under his beard. He angled his body slightly in front of Rachel the way he did without thinking, as though his frame could become a wall. Rachel adjusted the scarf around her mouth, breath fogging the wool. She fought down the dizziness climbing into her skull. She hated how weak she felt, how unsteady. Her training demanded alertness, precision, but the concussion reminded her with every throb she wasn't at full strength. Hunter, though Hunter, was steady. Hunter never faltered. "Keep moving," Ethan whispered. They reached the mouth of the alley where it spat out onto Maple Street. For a moment the town looked ordinary, snow-dusted storefronts, a diner sign buzzing weakly, a man with a shovel clearing the steps of the pharmacy. But in the reflection of the diner's glass, Rachel saw them. Two men in dark coats, suits underneath, standing too still for townsfolk, too deliberate, eyes hidden by sunglasses, though the sun barely broke through the winter clouds. Not locals, she breathed. Ethan followed her gaze, then pulled her closer. Federal Rachel shook her head faintly, or pretending to be. Either way, they're Briggses now. Hunter's growl deepened. He stepped in front of them. Muscles coiled, tail stiff. He was no longer just a family dog. He was a sentinel, a line drawn across the snow. One of the suited men lifted a phone to his mouth, murmured something, eyes still locked on the alley mouth. Rachel's instinct screamed, "They're waiting to box us in!" Ethan's eyes flicked across the street, options left toward the diner, right toward the park, or straight into the open where they'd be easy targets. He made the decision like he made all of them, fast, absolute. Left, now. They slipped into the diner. The bell over the door jingled a sound far too cheerful for the storm pressing against them. The smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee hit instantly. A few locals sat hunched over plates, shoulders heavy in winter coats, eyes lifting with idle curiosity. Ethan guided Rachel to a booth in the back where the window faced the alley they had just left. Hunter pressed himself under the table body, wedged tight, still vigilant. A waitress approached, tired but friendly, pencil poised. "What can I get you? 2 coffees, Ethan said quickly. "And a hot chocolate for my girl when she gets here." Rachel blinked at him, confused for half a second, then realized. He was laying cover, making them look like nothing more than a family waiting for a child. The waitress scribbled, nodded, walked away. Rachel leaned in, voice low. "We can't stay long. They'll follow. Briggs already knows." Ethan's eyes were steady, dark. "Then we use the time we've got." She met his gaze, pulse hammering. "For what?" "Tell me what you need," he said. "Tell me what evidence proves this, where it is, what I can get to without painting a target on Lily's back." Rachel's throat went dry. She glanced around diners, hunched over eggs and toast, the cook flipping pancakes in the back. None of them knew the storm swirling just outside. Finally, she whispered, "There's a storage unit just outside town. Everything I've gathered, files, photos, recordings, if Briggs gets to it, it's gone. But if I can pull it, I can send it straight to my bureau contact. That's the only shot we have at proving this isn't just small-town corruption. Ethan's jaw set. Then we get it. Rachel's hand trembled on the table. It's not that simple. They'll be watching it. They already know I came here for something. If I walk in alone, I won't walk out. Then you're not walking in alone, Ethan said. His voice carried no hesitation, only fact. Hunter's tail brushed against Rachel's shin, deliberate, reassuring. She looked down, saw those amber eyes locked on hers. For the first time since Denver, since the attack, since the snow, Rachel felt something she hadn't let herself feel in months. Not safety. That was too much to ask. But alignment. She wasn't fighting alone anymore. The coffees arrived. Steam curled into the cold air. Ethan wrapped his hands around the mug, though he didn't drink. Rachel did, letting the bitter liquid anchor her. Through the window, she saw the sedan crawl past. Slow. Watching. Waiting. Her heart kicked hard. She glanced at Ethan. He didn't move. He just held her gaze steady as stone until the car slid out of sight. The diner hummed with ordinary noise, knives scraping plates, the hiss of a grill, a child laughing near the counter. But beneath it, Rachel felt the drumbeat of something larger. The next move had to be theirs, and when they made it, there would be no turning back. The coffees went cold before either of them took more than a few sips. Rachel sat with her fingers curled around the mug eyes, fixed on the steam that had thinned into nothing. Her body was still, but her mind spun in tight, dangerous circles. The storage unit loomed in her thoughts like a locked vault, one holding the kind of proof that could expose Briggs for what he was, or destroy her if it was taken first. Ethan leaned back in the booth, shoulders filling the narrow space. His toolbox rested against his boots, ordinary and inconspicuous, yet his hand never strayed far from its handle. Every so often, his eyes flicked toward the window, toward the street beyond, where shadows moved in ways too calculated to be natural. Hunter shifted under the table, his warm body pressed against Rachel's legs, a steady weight that anchored her to the moment. His ears twitched at every sound, the clink of forks, the jingle of the diner's door, the slow drag of boots on linoleum. "You're pale," Ethan said quietly, breaking the silence. Head still pounding, Rachel nodded. "It's better than yesterday, but I'd be lying if I said I could run at full speed if things went south." His jaw tightened. "Then I'll run for you." Her eyes snapped to his. For a moment, words caught in her throat. No one had said something like that to her in years, not as a line, not as a shield, but as a promise. "Ethan," she began, but he shook his head. "Don't argue. Lily comes first, but you're under this roof now, which means you're mine to protect." The conviction in his voice startled her more than the words themselves. She looked away toward the window, blinking against the sting in her eyes. At the counter, the waitress poured coffee for a pair of truckers, her laugh thin but genuine. The world outside their booth went on spinning, oblivious to the storm gathering just beyond the glass. Rachel lowered her voice. "The unit's on Route 6, just past the lumber yard. Number 42. I rented it under a false name, but Briggs has eyes everywhere. If they've traced it, it won't stay hidden much longer." Ethan leaned forward, forearms braced on the table. "What's inside everything?" Rachel whispered. "Files copied from county servers. Photos of missing case files. A thumb drive with audio. Enough to bury him if it doesn't bury me first." Hunter gave a low growl. His amber eyes tracked the window as though the dog understood the weight of every syllable. Ethan followed the retriever's gaze. Across the street, the black sedan idled again, exhaust pluming into the air. The same car, the same watchers. Patient, relentless. "Then we move tonight," Ethan said, his voice final. "Dark gives us cover, snow muffles sound. We get and grab what you need, get out." Rachel hesitated. "And if they're waiting, then Hunter shows us first," he answered, eyes steady. He hasn't been wrong yet. Her lips parted, but before she could respond, the diner's bell jingled. Sheriff Briggs stepped inside. Snow clung to his coat, his hat brim dripping. He brushed it off slowly, deliberately, as though every motion were a performance. His pale eyes scanned the room once. They landed on Rachel, then Ethan, then dipped to the booth, where Hunter's golden fur was just visible beneath the table. The sheriff smiled. Well, Briggs drawled, sliding his gloves off finger by finger. A family breakfast. How wholesome. Rachel's pulse spiked. She forced her expression calm, though her body tensed like a coiled spring. Ethan's hand slid casually toward the toolbox at his feet. Briggs strode closer, boots heavy on the linoleum. Diners watched, some curious, some wary, none willing to intervene. His presence filled the space the way a storm cloud fills the horizon, looming inevitable. He stopped at their booth, eyes cutting into Rachel. "Detective Moore, you're looking better. Amazing how quickly people bounce back when they've got the right company." His gaze flicked to Ethan, then to Hunter, whose growl was rising like a storm under his breath. Rachel kept her voice steady. "Sheriff." Briggs leaned closer, resting his palms flat on the table. "See, I've been thinking. A Denver detective showing up half dead in my county doesn't sit right. Makes me wonder who you talked to, what you saw before you went off that road." Ethan's voice cut in calm but edged with steel. "She said she doesn't remember." Briggs turned his head slowly, studying Ethan with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "And you believe that I believe she almost died in the snow," Ethan said evenly. "And my dog saved her. That's all that matters." Briggs chuckled, low and cold. "Funny thing, Faith. Dangerous thing, too." Hunter surged, then head-lifting teeth flashing in silent warning. The sound drew eyes from every table. Briggs stepped back a half-inch, adjusting his coat, but his smirk lingered. "Enjoy your coffee," he said finally. "We'll talk again soon. And when we do, you'd better remember a whole lot more." He tipped his hat, turned, and left. The diner's bell jingled fragile against the weight of his threat. Rachel's hands shook. She gripped her mug to hide it. Ethan exhaled slowly, his shoulders unwinding just enough to release the tension coiled there. Hunter lowered his head back to the floor, but his eyes stayed locked on the door. Rachel whispered, "He knows." Ethan met her gaze. His voice was steady low. "Then tonight isn't optional. We get that evidence or we don't get another chance." Rachel nodded, her chest tightening. She reached down her hand, brushing Hunter's head fingers, digging into his fur. "Then we move tonight," she said. Hunter's tail thumped once against the tile. The pact was sealed. And as the snow fell heavier outside, the Carter house was no longer a refuge. It was a staging ground for a battle creeping closer with every tick of the clock. The drive back from the diner was wrapped in silence. Not the comfortable kind, but the brittle kind, thin as glass, sharp enough to cut. Snowflakes feathered down in lazy spirals, disguising the menace lurking in tinted sedans, and in Briggs's pale, predatory stare. Rachel sat rigid in the passenger seat, her gloved hands clenched in her lap. Each vibration of the truck seemed to echo in her ribs. Her mind replayed the sheriff's words over and over, each one a threat sharpened beneath a smile. Beside her, Ethan's grip on the wheel was iron. His knuckles were white, but his face stayed calm, a mask carved from quiet rage. Hunter sat tall in the back seat, nose pressed to the window, breath fogging the glass. Every so often his tail flicked, the only sign of restless energy coiled inside him. From the back seat, Lily piped up, her voice small, cutting through the heaviness. "Daddy? Why was the sheriff at the diner?" Ethan hesitated. He glanced at Rachel, then back at the road. "Sheriff checks on folks sometimes. Makes sure everyone's following the rules." Lily frowned, her brows knitting. "He doesn't feel like rules. He feels like trouble." Rachel turned in her seat, meeting the child's clear eyes. She wanted to say, "You're right." She wanted to say he's worse than trouble, but she couldn't. Instead, she reached back and brushed a strand of hair from Lily's face. "You're smart," Rachel said softly, "and sometimes being smart means keeping what you notice quiet, just for a while." Lily nodded solemnly as though accepting a secret mission. Hunter nudged her arm with his nose, sealing the pact. Back at the Carter house, snow had begun to pile along the fence line, muffling the street beyond. Ethan parked the truck and ushered everyone inside quickly. Curtains were drawn, lights kept low. The stove crackled, filling the air with the scent of cedar smoke. Rachel paced slowly, hand grazing the back of the couch as she moved. The dizziness had eased, but exhaustion clung like a second skin. "We have to move tonight," she repeated more to herself than anyone else. Ethan leaned on the counter toolbox at his feet. Then we plan it right. Storage units on Route 6. You said number 42? She nodded. Second row, left side. Blue door. Hunter circled the room once restless before planting himself at the front window. His ears twitched, his body tense. Watching. Always watching. Lily set her crayons on the table, looking up at the adults with a frown far too serious for her age. Are we in danger? The room froze. Ethan crouched beside her, his large hands resting gently on her small shoulders. We're careful, he said. That's different than danger. But yes, we have to be smart. Tonight you stay with Mrs. Patterson down the street. She'll keep you safe. Lily shook her head, eyes wide. No, I want to stay with you. Rachel knelt too, ignoring the throbbing in her skull. Sweetheart, sometimes keeping safe means letting the people who love you fight the hard parts. You'll be with us again before you know it. Hunter will bring us back. Hunter barked once sharp, as if agreeing to his assignment. Lily's lip trembled, but she nodded. She trusted them. That trust was heavier than any weapon Rachel had ever carried. Hours passed in fragments. Snow thickened outside streetlights, glowing halos in the storm. Ethan packed the toolbox with more than tools, flashlight rope, and old crowbar. Rachel wrote notes in a small pocket-sized pad, committing codes and contingencies to memory. Hunter lay still, saving his energy, though his eyes never closed. At 7, Ethan walked Lily to Mrs. Patterson's house. Rachel watched from the window as the little girl, bundled in scarves, clutched her father's hand. Mrs. Patterson, gray-haired and sturdy, greeted them at the porch. She hugged Lily close, then ushered her inside. Ethan lingered for a moment, speaking low, then returned through the snow, shoulders heavy. Rachel met him at the door. She'll be safe. She'd better be, Ethan muttered. Because if Briggs even thinks about touching that house... His words cut off, but the fury in his eyes finished the sentence. By 9, the streets were nearly empty. The storm had kept most folks home, their windows glowing warmly in the cold night. Ethan and Rachel stood in the kitchen, coats zipped, gloves ready. Hunter sat between them, silent, sentinel tail still. You sure about this? Ethan asked one last time. Rachel's eyes were steady, though her heart thudded in her chest. If we don't get that evidence tonight, it'll be gone by morning. He nodded, picked up the toolbox, pulled the door open. The night rushed in cold, sharp, endless. They stepped out together. Hunter followed his paws silent in the snow, his eyes gleaming gold in the dark. The street was empty. The sedan was gone. But the quiet felt wrong. Rachel's breath caught. It's a trap! Ethan's grip tightened on the toolbox. Then we walked straight through it. Hunter growled low and steady as the storm swallowed them whole. The road out of town was a ribbon of white snow swirling across it like restless ghosts. The truck's headlights carved tunnels through the dark, the beams swallowed quickly by the storm. Ethan's hands stayed locked on the wheel, his shoulders tight, every nerve in his body tuned to the night. Beside him, Rachel sat straight despite the ache in her skull. Her eyes never left the windows, scanning the edges of the road, the tree line, the mirrors. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every flicker of light a trap ready to spring. Hunter sat between them on the bench seat, pressed close, his nose twitching at scents that no human could catch. Every so often he gave a low whine, the kind he only made when his instincts screamed louder than reason. Ethan glanced at him once. He doesn't like this. Rachel's lips pressed thin. Neither do I. They didn't speak again until the outskirts of town disappeared behind them, swallowed by snow and distance. The lumberyard loomed ahead, its chain-link fence topped with ice, the skeletal shapes of stacked timber frozen into stillness. Beyond it, the row of storage units sat in darkness, a neat line of blue doors half buried in drifts. Ethan pulled the truck into the shadow of an abandoned maintenance shed. He killed the engine. Silence fell, broken only by the whisper of wind and Hunter's steady breathing. Rachel stared at the row of units, her heart thudded. Number 42. Left side, second row. Ethan reached behind the seat, pulling out the crowbar. He handed her the flashlight. Stay behind me. Her jaw tightened. I'm not helpless. I didn't say you were, he answered, voice flat but steady. But you're concussed, and I promised Lily I'd bring you back. That means I take the front. Hunter's tail gave one sharp thump as though sealing the argument. Rachel swallowed, then nodded. Fine. But if we get inside, I'm the one who opens it. I know what I left what to grab. They stepped into the storm. Snow crunched under boots, biting wind clawing at their faces. The beam of the flashlight cut through the darkness in a trembling line, landing on rows of doors, numbers painted white and streaked with rust. Hunter led Paws silent, his golden coat glowing faintly against the night. His body was tense, ears flicking back and forth. 39, 40, 41. Rachel counted under her breath. Her gloved fingers trembled around the flashlight. There. Unit 42. Blue door. Lock frozen stiff with ice. Ethan knelt, crowbar poised. He pried once, twice, metal groaning under the force. Finally, the lock snapped, clattering against the snow. Hunter growled, deep, urgent. Rachel spun flashlight, sweeping across the dark. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Only trees, only snow. Then headlights. Two beams flared at the far end of the lot. A car engine roared, cutting through the storm. Inside now, Ethan barked. Rachel yanked the door up the metal, shrieking against its frozen track. Inside the unit, the air was stale cold, smelling faintly of dust and oil. Boxes stacked high. A metal shelf. A duffel bag she recognized instantly. She lunged for it, grabbing the strap. This one, Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her deeper inside as Hunter darted in last, the dog's body low, hackles raised. Ethan slammed the door down just as another set of headlights swept across the lot. The unit plunged into darkness. Rachel's breath came ragged, the sound loud in the confined space. Ethan pressed a finger to his lips. Outside, tires crunched. Car doors slammed. Voices carried faintly through the storm. Check them all. She has to be here. Hunter pressed close to Rachel, his body rigid, ears straining toward the door. His growl was silent this time, only the vibration of muscle against her leg. Rachel clutched the duffel, heart hammering. She whispered so low she barely heard herself. They know. Ethan's voice was a ghost in the dark. Then we wait. We don't move until they pass. The footsteps came closer, heavy, boots on ice. Stopped, right outside their door. Rachel's throat locked. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Hunter froze like a statue, not even breathing, as though he knew silence was survival. The voice outside was muffled but clear enough. This one looks fresh. Lock's broken. Another voice answered, rough, certain. Briggs'll want eyes on it. Rachel's blood went cold. Ethan tightened his grip on the crowbar. His body coiled ready. But Hunter shifted, moving in front of them both, his body, a barrier, amber eyes burning in the dark. The footsteps lingered, then moved on. 1 second, 2, 10. Ethan exhaled slowly, the sound barely audible. Rachel's knees nearly buckled in relief. She pressed her forehead against the cold metal of the shelf, eyes squeezed shut. But she knew. This wasn't over. They had the evidence. Yes, but they were trapped. And sooner or later the storm outside would break down the thin door between them and the men waiting to erase them. The storage unit was black as a cave, the kind of darkness that seemed to breathe. Rachel's flashlight was off, tucked against her chest, every instinct screaming not to give away their position. Her breath came in shallow bursts, each one loud in the confined space. Ethan crouched beside her crowbar, gripped tight, his broad frame blocking half the cold air that seeped under the door. Hunter stood in front of them both, body braced, silent but ready, the golden fur along his spine rising like a mane. The voices outside grew sharper. This rose clear. No, check the ones with ice broken off the locks. Rachel's chest constricted. They were seconds away from being found. She pressed her lips to Ethan's ear, whispering so low she barely made sound. If they open this door, don't fight. Too many. They'll kill us. Ethan shook his head once. I don't let strangers decide what happens to Lily's father, or her future. Before Rachel could argue, Hunter gave a soft, deliberate whine. Not panic, a signal. He turned, pressed his nose against the back wall of the unit, then looked at Ethan expectantly. Ethan frowned, ran his hand along the metal. Found a seam. A panel slightly bent. Old maintenance hatch. Leads to the drainage ditch. Rachel's heart jolted. Can we fit Hunter pressed against the panel claws, scraping? It shifted just enough to show a sliver of snow beyond. "Yes," Ethan said, "but fast." The boots outside stopped again, right in front of their door. Metal rattled as someone tested the broken lock. Rachel clutched the duffel tighter. "Go! Now!" Ethan wedged the crowbar under the hatch. With one hard shove, it gave clanging faintly before spilling snow into the unit. Cold air rushed in. Hunter darted through, first his body vanishing into the white. Rachel shoved the duffel out, then crawled on hands and knees, biting back a groan as pain throbbed in her skull. Snow-soaked her gloves scraped her knees, but she forced herself through. Ethan came last, dragging the hatch shut behind him, just as the storage door screeched upward with a metallic wail. "Empty," a voice barked. Rachel froze in the ditch, pressed against the snowbank. She dared not breathe. Hunter lay low beside her, tail-stiff body pointed toward the road like a compass. Ethan slid in silently, crouching close, his chest heaving from the effort. They moved in a crawl, following the ditch as it curved behind the row of units. Above them, flashlights swept across the snow, voices overlapping in frustration. "She was here. That lock was broken. Check the tracks." Rachel's pulse slammed against her ribs. The ditch was filled with churned snow. Their prints would give them away in seconds. But Hunter, clever as ever, bounded forward, suddenly weaving through drifts and looping patterns. He backtracked, doubled over, scuffed the snow with his paws until the ditch looked like nothing but chaos. The men's shouts grew louder, but confusion laced through them. "Can't tell where the hell they went. They couldn't have vanished. Briggs isn't going to like this." Rachel pressed her face into her scarf, whispering to herself. "Good boy. Good boy." Hunter returned, pressed his warm body against her side. His breath fogged the night air, his eyes gleaming with something more than instinct. It felt like understanding. Ethan pointed ahead. The ditch spilled out toward the tree line, where the forest pressed close, dark and thick. "We make for the woods. They can't follow tracks once the snow comes down heavier." Rachel nodded, clutching the duffel so tight her knuckles ached. Together they crawled, then rose into a run when the ditch opened enough. Snow stung their faces, branches clawed at coats, but they pushed deeper into the trees. Behind them, engines roared to life. Headlights sliced across the lot, sweeping in furious arcs. But the forest swallowed them quickly, shadows closing in around the trio as they plunged deeper. Finally, Ethan slowed, pulling Rachel into the shelter of a pine grove. He leaned against the trunk chest, heaving steam curling from his breath. Hunter paced once, then settled, ears swiveling as he scanned the night. Rachel bent over, clutching her knees, heart racing so fast it felt like it might burst. The duffel strap dug into her shoulder, but relief never came. Only the truth of what they carried. Inside this bag was everything Briggs feared. Enough to put a sheriff in prison, enough to expose men in suits who never dirtied their hands, but only if they lived long enough to use it. Ethan looked at her, his eyes dark and steady in the moonlight. Now what Rachel swallowed hard. Now, we survive until morning. Hunter pressed his head into her hand. She stroked his fur, feeling warmth seep into her frozen fingers. For a moment, standing in that forest with snow muffling the chaos behind them, she believed they might. But then, faint and distant, a helicopter's blades began to thrum across the night. The storm was no longer just on the ground. It was coming from above. The thrum of rotor blades rolled across the treetops, low and heavy, as though the night itself had grown a heartbeat. Snow shook from branches in small avalanches, dusting Ethan's shoulders and Rachel's hat. The sound was getting closer. Rachel froze, eyes lifted to the strip of sky barely visible through the canopy. Her mind flashed to Denver, to operations she'd studied, surveillance teams, rapid extractions, covert pursuit. But this wasn't an ally coming. This was the same machine of power that wanted her silenced, bearing down on a Montana forest like a hawk on prey. Hunter pressed closer to her, leg muscles trembling with alertness. His ears flattened, nose lifted toward the wind. A warning. Ethan's voice was a whisper edged with urgency. "They're sweeping the woods. We can't stay still." Rachel adjusted the duffel on her shoulder. The strap dug into her collarbone, a physical reminder of the burden she carried. "If we break cover, they'll see us. Thermal scans can cut right through this storm." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Then we give them more than one heat signature to chase." Rachel frowned, catching his meaning. "Decoys." He nodded. "Hunter and I take one direction. You take another. Meet at the old mining camp in 2 hours. If they follow me, you stay clear with the evidence." If they follow you. No. Rachel cut in sharply. Her voice cracked louder than she intended, making Hunter's ears flick. She swallowed, lowered it. We're not splitting. If they catch you, Lily loses her father. If they catch me, the case dies with me. Either way, they win. For a long second, only the wind answered. Then Ethan's jaw tightened. So what's the move? Rachel's eyes darted through the trees, searching. The snow had thickened flakes spiraling down in sheets, muting the world into shifting white. Visibility was collapsing. We use the storm. Keep under cover until it blinds their sensors. Then move. Hunter gave a short bark as if in agreement. He bounded forward a few paces, then stopped looking back at them tail stiff. He had chosen a direction north deeper into the forest where the terrain sloped downward toward the river. Trust him, Ethan said simply. Rachel did. They ran. Snow clawed at their legs, branches whipped against coats. The duffel thumped heavy against Rachel's side. The storm swallowed their sounds, but the helicopter still loomed, blades pounding overhead, sweeping beams of light slicing through the whiteout in desperate arcs. Hunter led, weaving through trees with uncanny precision, always finding the clearest path, pausing only long enough to glance back to ensure they followed. His golden coat blurred into the snow, but his eyes gleamed when the searchlight skimmed past. Rachel stumbled. Once knees buckling, but Ethan's hand caught her elbow, hauling her upright without breaking stride. Don't stop, he urged, voice ragged from the cold. Her lungs burned. Each breath tasted of ice and metal, but she pushed forward. Because stopping meant capture. Stopping meant Briggs won. They broke through the trees into a shallow ravine. The wind howled louder here, funneled through the natural cut. Hunter leapt down first, paws sinking deep, then scrambled up the other side. Rachel slid after him, nearly losing her footing. Ethan was behind her, instantly steadying her with a firm grip at her waist. His body shielded her as the helicopter's searchlight skimmed the ravine. They froze, pressed against the banked snow, biting into their skin as the light lingered, then shifted away. Ethan's breath was hot against her ear. Go. Now. They scrambled up the far side, Hunter already waiting, ears pricked, body angled toward the north again. Minutes bled into an hour. The forest grew denser, the storm heavier. The helicopter faded, then returned, then faded again. A game of cat and mouse played out in the blizzard. At last, through the curtain of snow, Rachel saw it. The mining camp. Weathered wooden buildings leaned against time roofs caved in by storms past. Rusted equipment littered the clearing, skeletal reminders of lives once lived and abandoned. Ethan slowed, chest-heaving toolbox, still clutched tight. Rachel staggered beside him, every muscle screaming, the duffel dragging her shoulder down. Hunter ran ahead, circled the largest structure, then barked once, sharp, commanding. Safe enough for now. They pushed inside. The door groaned on its hinges, the air thick with dust and the faint stink of rust. Broken bunks lined the walls, a stone hearth gaped black and cold, but it was shelter. Ethan dropped the toolbox. Rachel lowered the duffel with trembling hands. She collapsed onto one of the bunks, head in her hands, breath tearing through her throat. Hunter sat in front of her, pressing his nose into her palm, grounding her again. Ethan stood by the window, peering through the cracks in the boards. His silhouette was rigid, a dark sentinel against the faint glow of snow outside. Finally, Rachel found her voice raw but steady. We can't keep running like this. They'll track us until we're dead or gone. We need to strike first. Ethan turned his eyes lit by the fire he hadn't yet built. Then tell me how. Rachel stared at the duffel. At the files, the drive, the evidence that could burn everything Briggs had built. Her chest ached with the weight of it. By tomorrow, she whispered, either this evidence reaches someone we can trust, or none of us see another sunrise. Hunter growled low, a sound that rumbled like agreement and warning both. The storm battered the old mining camp, rattling the walls, sweeping snow against the shutters. Inside, 3 souls huddled together, each breath sinking with the others, waiting for morning, and for the fight that morning would bring. The storm howled all night, battering the mining camp with icy fists. Snow slid from the roof in heavy sheets, branches snapped like gunfire in the wind. Inside, the old hearth glowed faintly where Ethan coaxed life from half-rotted wood. The warmth was weak, but it was enough to keep fingers from stiffening and breath from turning to crystals. Rachel sat near the fire, her back against the stone, the duffel in her lap. She had not let go of it once, even in the haze of exhaustion when her head sagged against the wall and her eyelids fluttered, her arms stayed locked around the bag. It wasn't just evidence, it was her lifeline. Ethan moved around the room like a man rebuilding a battlefield. He checked windows, stacked crates against the weakest points, laid tools within reach. His silence was steady, but his jaw was tight. His eyes shadowed. Hunter never rested. He patrolled the perimeter of the cabin with disciplined rhythm, 2 steps, pause, ears swiveling, 3 steps, a low sniff at the door. His presence was the heartbeat of the room. Each time he circled back to Rachel, he pressed his warm muzzle against her leg as though reminding her still here, still safe. At dawn the storm eased. The wind fell to a whistle, snow tapering into thin flurries. The forest emerged again, dark pines, heavy with white branches sagging the world, muffled under a new layer of silence. Ethan stood at the window crack, scanning the tree line. They'll move today. Storm gave us cover, but it gave them time to set their pieces too. Rachel rubbed her temple, wincing at the dull ache that still throbbed from the concussion. Then we move before they do. She unzipped the duffel, pulling out folders wrapped in plastic, a thumb drive, sealed tight photos clipped together. Evidence. Hard proof of the sheriff's corruption enough to ripple far beyond Millbrook County. Ethan studied the pile. How do you plan to get it out? Rachel's voice was quiet, but certain. Signal's better higher in the mountains. There's a ranger tower about 3 miles north. If we can reach it, I can send encrypted files to my bureau contact in Denver. If she's still clean, she'll know what to do. And if she's not, Ethan asked. Rachel's fingers tightened on the files. Then, at least the truth is loose. Someone will see it. Ethan nodded once. 3 miles. In this snow. With them hunting. He looked down at Hunter, who had lifted his head at the word hunting. The dog's amber eyes gleamed in the firelight, steady, unflinching. We'll trust him to find the path. They set out mid-morning. Snow crunched under boots deep and heavy, each step a drag through white resistance. Rachel carried the duffel strapped across her chest. Ethan hauled the toolbox on one shoulder, crowbar in his hand. Hunter ran ahead, bounding through drifts, tail high, cutting trails that curved away from open spaces and kept to shadow. The forest was too quiet. Rachel's instincts screamed. Every branch creak sounded like a bootstep. Every shadow looked like a man with a gun. She kept glancing back, certain eyes were drilling into her spine. Hunter stopped suddenly, his body stiffened tail, straight ears locked forward. He let out a low, guttural growl. Ethan froze. What is it, boy? Rachel followed Hunter's gaze. Through the trees, faint but visible, a thin ribbon of smoke curled into the gray sky. Campfire, she whispered. Too close. Too fresh. Ethan's jaw clenched. Not hikers. Not in this storm. Hunter growled again, shifting his body in front of Rachel instinctively. Backtrack, Ethan asked. Rachel shook her head. No time. They'll box us in. We cut east toward the riverbed. It'll throw off the tracks. Hunter barked once sharp and darted east without waiting for approval. They followed. The ground sloped slick with ice. Rachel nearly fell, but Ethan's hand clamped her arm, steadying her. Careful. Her heart hammered. I hate needing you to do that. Then hate me later, he said, eyes scanning the woods. Right now we run. They reached the frozen riverbed. Snow masked most of the ice, but the surface was solid enough to carry them. Their footprints vanished into the sheen, erasing their trail. Hunter trotted ahead, nose low, tail stiff. Rachel dared a glance back. Through the pines, dark figures moved 3, maybe 4. Black coats, rifles slung across shoulders. They're close, she hissed. Ethan's eyes flickered toward her, then back to the path. Then we're closer to that tower. They pushed harder, boots slipping on ice breath ragged in the thin, cold air. The river curved, funneled between cliffs. The sound of blades returned faint, then louder. The helicopter. Rachel's stomach lurched. They're driving us into a trap, Hunter barked furiously, turning in circles, nose snapping upward at the sky. Then, without hesitation, he darted toward a narrow cut in the cliffside, a path invisible until you were nearly upon it. Hunter's call, Ethan said. Go! They followed him into the slit of rock snow, scraping their coats' branches, clawing at their faces. The sound of the helicopter muffled as the walls closed around them. Behind the river stretched empty, their pursuers pausing, confused by the vanished trail. Rachel clutched the duffel tighter. Her voice was hoarse but fierce. "That dog just saved us again." Ethan looked at Hunter with something close to awe. Lisa always said he'd know more than we did. I should have believed her sooner. The narrow path opened into a sheltered clearing, the ranger tower's silhouette faint against the horizon, skeletal and tall above the tree line. Rachel's chest tightened with relief and dread. They were close, but close meant visible. Ethan caught her glance. "We make a stand if we have to." Hunter's growl rumbled low as though agreeing. Snow stung their faces. The tower loomed nearer, and with it the certainty that the storm was about to break. The ranger tower loomed out of the storm like the skeleton of some ancient giant steel girders iced over wooden steps rising into the sky, the cabin at its top swaying faintly in the wind. Snow crusted the structure, clinging to rails, frosting the windows until they gleamed white. Rachel's breath came fast, pluming into the air as she tilted her head back. "If I can get to the top, the signal should reach Denver. I can push everything through." She tapped the duffel at her chest, the weight of it heavy as chains. Ethan's eyes scanned the tree line. His voice was low, gravelly. "And if they see us before then?" Rachel met his gaze. The answer didn't need words. They both knew. Hunter bounded a few steps forward, then froze. His body stiffened, hackles up. A growl bubbled low in his throat. His head turned sharply left, then right, nose testing the wind. "They're here," Rachel whispered. From the trees, dark figures emerged. Black coats. Rifles glinting faintly under the dull light. Silent. Precise. 4 men to the left, 3 to the right. Their boots crunched the snow in rhythm like soldiers who had rehearsed this moment. Ethan stepped in front of Rachel, instinctively, toolbox in one hand, crowbar in the other. He looked like a man armed with scraps against a machine of war, but his stance, broad and steady, carried the weight of defiance. Rachel's pulse thundered. The concussion still pulsed at her temple, but adrenaline drowned the pain. She shifted the duffel strap across her shoulder, ready to run for the tower if even a sliver of chance appeared. The helicopter's thrum returned sweeping low over the trees. Snow exploded in swirling clouds as the beam of its spotlight slashed across the clearing, pinning them in cold brilliance. A voice boomed from a megaphone distorted by the rotor wash. "Detective Moore. Drop the bag. Step away from the civilians. This ends now." Rachel's chest tightened. The voice wasn't Briggs's. It was federal-trained commanding, calculated. But her contact's warning rang in her ears like a siren. "Trust no one in law enforcement." Ethan's hand brushed her arm. "They're not here to help." She nodded once, heart hammering. Hunter barked furiously, bounding in front of them both, his body angled toward the advancing men. His teeth flashed his growl so fierce it reverberated in the frozen air. Rachel whispered, "We can't win a firefight." Ethan's jaw flexed. "Then we don't fight their way." He glanced at Hunter, then at the duffel. "You get to that tower, upload everything. Hunter and I will hold them long enough." Rachel's throat closed. "No." "If you stay, Rachel—" He cut in his voice, a blade through the chaos. "Lily needs you to finish this. She needs me to keep them off you. That's how this ends." The men tightened, their formation rifles raised. Snow sprayed as they stepped into the clearing. Rachel's eyes burned. She wanted to argue, to refuse, but Hunter barked again, sharp and insistent, turning toward the tower, amber eyes blazing as if he understood the command already. Ethan stepped forward. Crowbar in hand, broad shoulders squared. "Go," he ordered. Rachel turned, heart tearing in her chest, and sprinted for the tower. Hunter raced at her side, bounding ahead, guiding her to the base of the icy stairs. Shouts erupted behind. Gunfire cracked. Bullets bit into the snow, spraying white powder across her legs. She stumbled, caught herself, clung to the rail. Her boots pounded the steps, one after another, lungs burning as she climbed higher and higher. Hunter stayed just below her, snarling down at the men who tried to follow. Twice he leapt, teeth flashing, forcing them back. His growls were a wall, his body a barricade. Rachel burst into the cabin at the top. Wind tore through the cracked windows. The radio sat in the corner, ancient but functional battery humming faintly. She dropped the duffel, ripped it open, jammed the drive into the port of the small computer wired to the signal system. come on, she muttered, fingers flying over the keys, her breath ragged. The files began to transfer images, audio reports, every piece of corruption she had gathered. Bars of signal strength flickered weakly, then steadied. Outside, chaos roared. The helicopter circled lower. Gunfire cracked. Voices shouted orders. And through it all, Ethan's voice bellowed once raw and fierce, like a man standing against the tide. Rachel's eyes blurred with tears. She hit the final key. The message went. Files launched into encrypted streams beamed out into the digital ether, where no hand could catch them all. Hunter barked behind her, urgent. She turned just in time to see a flashman climbing, rifles raised, storming the steps. But before they reached the top, the radio chimed. Confirmation. Message delivered. Rachel's knees buckled. Relief surged through her, so sharp it was painful. She had done it. The truth was out, even if none of them left this mountain alive. Down below, Ethan roared again, crowbar in hand, swinging with the desperation of a father who had already buried one love and refused to bury another. Snow turned crimson in patches where men fell, but more pressed forward, endless as the storm. Hunter growled at the door, his body blocking Rachel as boots pounded the last steps. And in the swirling chaos of snow and steel, Rachel knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the reckoning. Your thoughts will help us create meaningful stories. And if you want to hear more powerful healing stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And most importantly, share this video with people who need a little hope today. Thank you so much for your time. We hear you, we listen to you, and we are honored to tell these stories for you.